The Family Madrigal, the hit song from Disney's Encanto that'll eat deep into your brain like a Colombian jaguar. But is it just a catchy song? After all, animation's a visual medium. And as the first scene in the story proper, there's a lot the sequence has to convey in a short amount of time. First and foremost, it has to introduce our protagonist, but in an appealing way. You can't make a bajillion Disney bucks off a film with an unlikable hero. But the scene also has to introduce a huge supporting cast of 100,000... Okay, it's like 10. But they all have different relationships and quirks. It's a lot to take in all at once. But using a set of animation and storytelling tools, such as framing, priming, color, editing, unique gaits, and dance, Disney accomplished all of this in under 5 minutes. Okay, but why so many characters in the first place? Well, the story kind of necessitates knowing about the whole family up front, since family dynamics is kind of the point of the film. But also, Lin-Manuel Miranda loves large casts. I mean, he really loves large casts. In fact, when working on Moana, he was like, Moana has 8 brothers.
Moana had six older brothers.
And Disney was like, absolutely not. Our motto is paring down characters, not adding complexity with more.
Scene went away, as did her 6 older brothers.
So Lin-Manuel was like, I'm not giving away my shot to write for 1 million Disney characters. And then wrote the Family Madrigal to prove that it was possible to quickly and effectively establish a large cast and their relationships. When the scene starts, we see Mirabel in her room. She states her need to make her family proud,
Make your family proud.
and the music kicks in. From this moment on, we're going to be meeting these family members one by one, and fast. Remember, we have under 5 minutes. Mirabel starts waking up the rest of her family. We start with Isabella and see the inside of her magic room. Hey, wait a minute, we don't see anybody else's room in this song. What makes Isabella's room so special? Well, this is an example of priming. We see Isabella's room now because we need to recognize the location later, when Mirabel has to confront Isabella.
Isabella!
But this one shot does even more. Isabella doesn't really acknowledge Mirabel standing in the doorway. She just shakes her hair and, oh, look at that! The slow-mo hair eclipses Mirabel, a visual metaphor for their relationship and what kind of person Isabella is. The entire shot is efficient storytelling, where with careful framing and action, one shot can communicate character relationships and prime the viewer for what's coming later in the story. So, framing can help convey character relationships, but how else can we aid the viewer? Well, color can be used to help catalog the large cast. When we finally see the family together, we also see the stark color contrast between the two sides of the family, with cool colors on one side and warm colors on the other. And when we see little Antonio, he wears a white suit, reflecting his unknown potential, as he won't be getting his magic gift until that evening. Even the townspeople wear more neutral colors, showing us that they're not really as important to the story and naturally leading our eyes to the main cast. But it's the camera, the CG camera, that's literally leading our eyes. This scene primarily uses basic cuts from shot to shot. Remember, we gotta get through these intros fast, so most shots last anywhere from 2 to 8 seconds, and the shorter shots are often one after another. This is a problem because our eyes might get lost and not know where to look when it cuts. So what's the solution? Well, they used a tried and true technique of keeping the main subject in the middle of the frame. And when it's not in the middle of the frame, they make the next shot's subject in the same spot as the previous one. It's easier to keep track of the subjects if your eyes don't have to move. We also see a lot of whip pans. So many whip pans to keep the pace snappy, and to tell us we're changing location. There's also some zoom transitions into the family painting, to help keep the relationship between the character in the painting and their introduction shots. We even get a wipe transition when Mirabel dances with her mom, and then another one with her hair, and another with a townsperson passing by. And who could forget the extreme zoom out with Dolores listening from miles away? All of these are just basic editing tools, but there's a lot of them happening in succession to serve the scene's purpose of giving a lot of information all at once. These kinds of cinematic techniques are not employed in animation nearly as often as live action, especially in the pre-digital age. Look, we even get a rack focus here, for shifting attention from one subject to another in the same shot. Those kids could easily have been poking their heads through the window, no focus needed. But a rack focus makes the world feel more three-dimensional. The CG camera is moving almost the entire song, keeping the shots fresh and engaging. This is really one of the pluses about CG animation that isn't talked about too much. Here we see the camera moving through space, simulating a character tracking forward. Sure, we can see this in older 2D animation, using tools like the multiplane camera or digital compositing today, but look at this camera movement when Mirabel walks around the table. The camera follows her. We feel embedded in the visual space because the room rotates slightly. In 2D, this would likely be a pan across a background that's warped to change perspectives. But the only way to really match this in 2D is to animate the background itself, which is really time-consuming. But CG animation can do all of this out of the box. Cinematic techniques are just one half of this story. The other half is good old-fashioned character animation. For example, we only meet Louisa for a few seconds at first, but that's all it takes to understand her immediately. And it's not just the dumbbells that hint at her personality, it's also her peculiar gait. A gait is a walk or run, and it's one of the first things you learn how to do in animation. Even 100 years ago, animators knew that a gait expresses a lot about a person. And this exaggerated run immediately communicates seriousness and physical strength. And it's accentuated by contrasting it with Mirabel's light and joyful skipping. Louisa will almost exclusively run like this until she loses her powers, and it's replaced with a glum walk. We see all sorts of interesting gaits in this song. Isabella has a gait that conveys elegance, once again in stark contrast to Mirabel's excited actions. They push the elegance so far that it's almost being played for laughs when she's gracefully shedding flower petals. Hey, she just made those palettes even heavier and she's just gonna walk away like that? Mirabel's gaits are the most unique of all. She uses a faux cool walk here that's almost sarcastic. It's communicating not an awkward confidence, but a confidence in her awkwardness, making her relatable. After she talks to Mariano, we get a blinking you'll miss it gait as she pops from a slide into an embarrassed walk. Later, when the kids chant with anticipation of hearing Mirabel's gift, she changes up her gait, this time backwards. She pumps her arms like she's saying, "I really gotta get going." It's a subtle observation of modern comedic sensibility. I mean, can you picture Cinderella walking like this? Now, gait isn't the only kind of movement used to convey character. In Encanto, if people aren't walking or running, they're dancing. Dancing isn't really something we get a lot of in modern Disney animated features. Aladdin didn't really dance, the characters from Frozen didn't really dance, Moana didn't really dance, at least not as often, and they're more often making theatrical gesticulations. Even in older movies, they're dancing usually because there's a story beat that calls for it, like it's a ballroom or just a party. Encanto exudes Colombian dance culture, but it didn't have to. Why bother? It's not like animating dance is easy. Encanto utilizes dance as just another tool in the character animation toolbox. It's basically another form of gait. Mirabel's dance movements and expressions hint at her love and confidence in dance. It's something that comes naturally to her. Maybe almost too natural. Okay, look at this. From the moment Mirabel tries to make her escape from the children, lest she admit she has no magic gift, she's thrown an accordion. We see her start playing and then whoosh! It's like an unseen force pulls Mirabel out of frame. And in a flat medium shot, she plays until she tosses the accordion away. But look at the line of action for her head. It's a straight line. That's unusual. We bounce up and down when we move our legs. What's going on here? Okay, here's a theory. Mirabel has two opposing desires in this moment. 1, to get away from the kids, and 2, to dance. See, Mirabel can't not dance when something danceable is happening, with only a few exceptions in the entire film. See how she falls out of frame? That's her legs literally taking over her body. She knows it too. Watch her grimace and look down at her hands and legs acting of their own accord. Her head is trying not to comply as she would rather sneak away and not draw attention to herself. She realizes, I can't control my legs, so I just gotta toss this thing to get away. Mirabel, at least below her head, must dance. And I'm not making a joke, we see this over and over in the film. We see it during We Don't Talk About Bruno. Mirabel is standing in the Memories of Peppa's Wedding, where a hurricane is summoned. Her facial expressions show that she's entranced in the story being told. But what are her shoulders doing? Shifting to the beat. A moment later, Dolores is telling her about Bruno. Dolores does a few steps to a dance, and if you look very closely, you can see Mirabel glance at Dolores' steps, so she can follow the dance too. And once again, she looks completely helpless. She even tries to escape, but gets twirled back into the scene, and she stops spinning just in time to glimpse Dolores' final stomp. And what does Mirabel do? She mirrors the move with her own stomp. Pretty cool, huh? The dance mimicry subtly shows Mirabel's unconscious need to follow and please her family, and even the townspeople. Or maybe she just loves to dance. The song rides that line between information overload and being readable. Remember, the story team is putting a ton of information into each shot, and some shot lengths are confined to the timing of musical beats. So there's a few moments where events happen so fast that the viewer might miss some things. For example, when we first learn that Peppa's emotions affect the weather, she does a Sound of Music dance off screen and then angrily storms back on screen. At least, that's what I thought happened. She actually trips and falls off screen, but the fall happens at the very edge of the frame. And for some, this didn't read as a fall until a second viewing, but I'm sure you had no problem reading it. Camila's intro has a similar issue, only this time the challenge is getting a read on his face. We have plenty of time to see him transform, but his true form is on screen only for a second, while also competing for attention with other actions. Blink and you'll miss it. But these minor potential misreadings hardly matter, because the scene's mission statement is still executed brilliantly. Through the use of skilled framing, color, editing, unique gaits, and dance, we quickly understand that Mirabel is funny and relatable, while still being unique in Disney canon. And we get introduced to over 10 characters, getting hints at their personalities and relationships in an easily digestible way. This is Disney's efficient storytelling at its best, making the Family Madrigal one of the greatest opening numbers in all of Disney animation.